Hi, welcome to our Manage Online Parts and Inventory Management webinar. Before we get started, it's worth stating that if you haven't completed any setup of Manage Online yet, you'll get a lot more out of this webinar today if you've at least completed the primary setup phase, adding vendors and catalogs, labor rates, etc. Now don't worry if you haven't added parts yet, because we'll actually cover that in our session today. In fact, when we're done today, you should be able to go back to your Manage Online database and add your own inventory parts with line codes, mark any of them as quick parts, fluids, or stock parts, create purchase orders, process a return, and track and manage your inventory. And one feature that can help you is the step-by-step guidance that we've built into Manage Online to help you set up inventory items and parts successfully. So to get started, let me orient you to the screen you see in front of you. Now the screen you see can be set to view in HD or high definition. I'll be sharing my screen with you throughout our webinar, so if you want to take that screen area and make it full screen, feel free to do so. We have a resource list here where I've shared some materials and links that can be really helpful to help you get started. Feel free to download those or click on those links anytime. If you have any questions during or after today's on-demand webinar, you can also contact us from the link on the left of the screen here, and we'll be able to help you live over the phone with any training question you might have. Now we have a survey there as well. We'd really appreciate your feedback about how you think today's training went. We do read all your comments, so if there are specific topics today that you found really helpful, or if there was something we didn't cover that you'd like to see in a future training, please let us know through that survey. So let me launch my screen share here, and I'll start demonstrating adding parts. Now before we dive into adding and ordering parts, let's step back a little and we'll look at a couple of inventory setup tasks that we need to do first. So line codes are used to categorize parts for use in parts lookup and reporting. Now they're required when you create a new part, and they provide an ability to group like items together for reporting and searching. So for example, your line codes could be brand related, such as FRA for Fram or BDX for Bendix. And line codes can also be related to items or part types, such as WIP for wipers or BRK for brake related items. Now either way, we recommend choosing a parts categorization method and sticking with it. Now setting up line codes are easy. You can find a step-by-step guide by clicking our resource question mark icon here. And under inventory setup, you can launch the line codes walkthrough and follow the easy prompts. But we'll do a quick demo here. So I'll go to setup and codes and line codes. Now as I said before, I just need to pick a categorization method and stick with it. Now since I don't stock a lot of parts, I'm categorizing my parts by type. So I'll choose BATT for battery. I'll enter that into the description and click update. Now when I add batteries to my inventory, BATT is the line code I'm going to choose for each battery. We'll also want to make sure that we've set up account codes and our parts vendors, whether we're ordering electronically or not. Now again, you can find the step-by-step walkthrough for account codes under the inventory setup, and vendor setup is part of the primary setup phase, which we recommend that you've already completed by now, or complete very soon. Now with line codes, account types, and vendors already set up, let's turn our attention to adding parts. Now adding parts here is going to really help you before you begin creating custom jobs, and will also help track parts on different orders, help you process returns to the correct vendor, and track and manage your stock levels. Now again, there's a very useful step-by-step walkthrough under inventory setup for adding parts, but we'll do a demonstration here anyway. So we go to setup, and parts, and on the parts entry screen, the required areas we need to complete are the line code, the part number, description, and vendor. So let's enter those for this new part I'm adding. Now, the account code isn't required, but it allows you to create categories for better inventory management and reporting, and we recommend it. Now, the range code isn't that important for our purpose today, so in interest of time, I'm just going to skip that. I've already set up my vendors, so I'm going to choose the one I get this part from the most from this dropdown. And the vendor part number is used to keep track of the vendor if it's different from the part number used when you enter the part into your inventory, and it's not required. I'll enter my cost, which is obviously whatever the vendor is charging me. I'll enter in the selling price, and one very handy feature here is the suggested markup. If you've created a default parts price markup in the setup phase, or a pricing matrix for this particular vendor, then suggested markup will inform you what the price of that part should be based on your entered cost. Now, the trade price is the amount you charge a wholesale account for this part. Manage Online will use the selling price for customers who are designated as a retail customer and the trade price for customers who've been designated as wholesale customers on the customer information screen. So if you have customers designated as wholesale, it's highly recommended that you enter an amount into this field, even if it's the same as the retail price. Not doing so will result in this part being added to a work document with a selling price of $0. Okay, we're obviously adding a part, so our product tax type here should be parts. Now, sales class codes are used for bookkeeping and accounting purposes, so again, I'll choose the parts sales, but if you don't select one, then it'll use default sales class code, which is probably fine. A condition isn't required at all, but choosing superseded here can help to let you know that the part number is an old part number, and the program will allow you to note what the new part number is. Now, the unit of issue is the number of items per part number, and box quantity is the number of parts per case if you're ordering a whole case of something. Light bulbs or hose clamps, for example. A unit of issue could also be the volume you sell a fluid at, and the box quantity would be the bulk amount you have on hand. Now, the additional information area here might be helpful to provide specs for parts such as dimensions, but again, it isn't required. The next three checkboxes here let you create some shortcuts when adding this part to a work ticket. We'll choose Quick Parts when you think this part is one of your most common used parts, and it'll be added to a sublist so that you can quickly add it to a ticket. Fluids works the same way. If this part is a commonly used fluid, then choose this and it'll be added to a short fluids sublist to be quickly added to a ticket. And lastly, we'd choose stocked part if you intend to keep this part in your inventory. It'll allow you to track the current stocking level of the part. If this was a shop supply item, you can denote that here. The last category includes free stock, which is basically the same as quantity on hand. Min and max are very helpful for reordering purposes. The minimum stocking level will alert you when your stock is below the desired quantity. Max is used for reordering when using the suggested orders feature, which we'll cover shortly. And if you have parts bin locations, you can enter that here. Okay, once I've entered my part, I'll select Update, and that part is now entered in my inventory. Now, while we're here, if you're searching for a part, you can use the Find option if you know the part number. But let's say you don't know the part number, then the percentage sign acts like a wildcard, and as you can see, will return your entire inventory when you select Search. You can keyword search by the first word in the description also. Now, if you want to pause here and go into Manage Online to enter a few parts manually before returning to the next section, then we recommend doing that. Next, we'll cover importing parts from another program. If you have a parts list available from another program, it can be imported into Manage Online's database. Now, the information will need to be provided in the correct format, so let's take a quick look at what's needed there. So we'll go to Setup, and then Parts Inventory Import. Now, to confirm you have a correctly formatted file, we're going to click this link here. And as you can see, the file needs to be specifically a .csv file, and it should be zipped with the file part named parts.csv. Now, there's also a formatted template file here to help ensure the parts and pricing details will import correctly. Now, I won't go into much more detail than that, but please work with an IT professional if you're not sure what some of these instructions refer to, and give us a call or email via the Contact Us link, and we'll certainly help you if importing a parts inventory is something that you need. Now, many customers need to order parts not associated with a specific repair order. So, to do that, we'll go to our inventory section here, and we'll select New Order. In the Quick Part Entry area, enter the line code, part number, descriptions, and quantity. And we'll click Add to Order. Now, this will add the part to the list of parts you will be providing for your vendor. We'll need our cost and sell information, and of course, we need to select our parts vendor from this list. Now, if this is a part from your inventory, the cost and sell prices will be populated for you based on the selected vendor. Manage Online will use the vendor you selected when this part was entered into your inventory. When we're done and ready to order our parts, we select them all from the right-hand side, and from here, the process of ordering and receiving is similar for ordering and receiving parts from the repair order. And for best part tracking and reporting, it's highly recommended that you process orders from one vendor at a time. Let's cover a few important sections here. The advice note, ref, is used to provide additional identification information with the order, such as vehicle ID, for example. The purchase invoice number is used to enter the vendor's invoice number when we receive the order from the vendor, and it's really important for tracking where parts come from, so don't forget this step. Let's click Order. In this pop-up, you can add any special instructions for the driver who's delivering the parts. As a good backup, you might enter the vehicle information here for this part. Order type allows you to choose how you wish to place the order. Online is only available when we're submitting an electronic order from the vendors that have been properly set up in the Catalog e-business area of setup. Email is email orders to vendor's email address provided in the vendor setup information, and print obviously prints out a copy of the order. Now, for any orders that are online, we need to select Inquiry first before ordering. But in our example, I'm just going to email this order to our vendor, so I just select Order, and provided I've included an email with this vendor, then they'll get my order to fulfill. So when the parts arrive, I come back to my inventory section and select My Orders. This section allows you to search for purchase orders created from New Order, as well as purchase orders created by suggested orders, which we'll cover in a minute, and orders that are created while building a repair order. Here, I can choose to find multiple orders either via order number, date range, or the vendor. Now, I only ordered this part today, so pretty easy to find with today's date. Select the order to receive. Remember earlier we talked about the importance of including the purchase invoice number, and here's where we need to enter that. You should find it on the invoice from the vendor included with the part. We'll confirm cost and sell price and click Receive. Now the last step is to pay the invoice if you want to do that, or you can bring up your invoices at a later date and pay them all together for that vendor. Okay, let's take a look at other features under our inventory section. Suggested orders gives you the ability to get a list of suggested quantities to restore stocking levels for your stock parts. For example, we can select a vendor or select all. Click on Suggest, and you can see a list of parts that the program is suggesting need reordering based on the min, max, and current stock levels. You can also see how many of these parts are on current open repair orders. The number in the order quantity is determined by the quantity of the item needed to replenish the stock of the item back to its max quantity. Check the boxes for the items to be included in the order, and change the quantity if necessary. And click Add to Order. Now you're ready to place the order in the way we demonstrated earlier. Again, it's highly recommended to only order from one vendor at a time for part tracking and reporting purposes. Okay, Returns allows you to keep track of returns to your vendors. Let's say that last part was faulty, or I didn't actually need it. I need to go to My Orders first, and I can use date range, vendor, etc. to find the part that I'd received earlier. I'm going to select Received, and I also need a Goods Received note. So I check that. Click Search, and there it is. This is the Create Returns Note screen. Notice that vendor should already be selected for you. And you can delete any items from this screen that don't need to be returned. We'll click Edit on the item that we're returning, and this populates the details up here, so we can include a return reason, add an advice note or reference, and we'll click Update. And the last step for a return is to click Create Return. To track returns, we go to our Returns section, and we can search for vendor by date range. We can search for open or complete returns. So for our example, I'll choose complete. Now the last three sections here are areas where we can get reports and tracking data. Stock movements shows all part usage activity, whether they're in the parts inventory list or not. Now this can be adding a part to a repair order or invoice or credit. It can also be a return or manual stock adjustments. The report shows movements by listing stock adjustments, reasons for adjustment, and current quantity on hand. Stock count and adjustments provides a report that shows a view of your current stock level of your parts and provides an option to adjust the stock level. So we'll click Display for a full list of your entire inventory and total stock value. Now that can be a bit overwhelming if you have a lot of inventory, so you can search by part number, vendor, account code, or bin location if you use them. You can also print and export this to a .csv file for use with other business systems. The last option in our inventory section is stock usage. This allows you to monitor stock usage by month and allows you to view how much of a certain item has been sold over the course of the previous year. Search features are pretty much the same as other areas. Don't select anything and click Display to get a full list of parts usage beginning at the chosen month and looking backwards through the previous 12 months. Okay, let's wrap it up here. So we demonstrated a couple of important setup steps specific to parts and inventory, and those were line codes, account codes, and vendors. And we demonstrated how to add a part into your inventory, mark it as a quick part or a fluid, etc. And lastly, we looked at how to place a purchase order, process a return, and the various reporting and tracking features under the inventory section. Thanks.